I'd like to welcome Joseph Michelli back to the show. He's on a second time here. He is an American psychologist, organizational consultant, internationally sought after speaker, and best-selling author known for his expertise in customer experience and business relationship. He is a Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Publishers Weekly, Nielsen Bookscan, and New York Times #1 bestseller. His latest book is All Business is Personal, One's Medical's Human-Centered Technology-Powered Approach to Customer Engagement. Welcome back, Joseph. Nice to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Darshan. I try to make the subtitles as long as possible so they're completely unreadable.
So for those of listeners who may not have heard your story originally, kind of give us an update on the aha moments that have brought you to where you are.
Yeah, the aha moment for me always starts with my mom and dad. They're the ones who said, "You're not on this planet to be served, but to serve." That's an aha moment that's kept me going throughout my life. I think there are moments along the journey where I thought, is this really what I should be doing to serve others? So there is that question. There are times when I get really lost in my own, how am I going to make it through here? Instead of kind of trusting that if you create value, value comes back in return. So I've gotten lost along that and forgotten the aha moments, but I keep asking that question as part of my process.
And so what brought you to the intersection of human connection and business success?
Yeah, I think, as a psychologist, I trained in systems psychology. So I was really looking at the fact that any individual can't succeed unless the ecosystem around them also supports that initiative. Or if the other parties in the ecosystem have different agendas, you have to align on those before you can actually advance. So it's really that negotiation of your needs against the needs of the ecosystem. That at a micro level is kind of the family unit, right? Like, how do you get all the parties in a family to have the same objectives and work to make sure that all their needs get met? At a much more corporate level, and I've done it in a singular system, so maybe a healthcare system. And then at one point, I was involved in merging two healthcare systems, one from the Seventh-day Adventists, one from the Catholics. And while they both have a religious tenet, they have very different philosophical perspectives. And so bringing these two cultures together was kind of the introduction of that. And now I do it mostly in the context of, Fortune 500 companies. I do some mid-sized companies in consulting, but the journey is really one of how do we get these players to see that true vision and then align and leverage people, process, and technology to execute to create a great experience for their customers and sustain their business success.
What are a couple of aha moments you've had that made you realize that your mind had to shift and think a different way and change the trajectory and the way you thought about things?
Yeah, there are many. I mean, I think for the first part is that as a consultant in my career, I used to think I had to have the answers, not the smart questions. So an aha moment for me is to go in and ask leaders now to get even more granular about what success looks like. What does done mean to them? Because I think oftentimes they have a vague sense of it and often don't have a time to really reflect on it themselves or to be queried about it in a way that's meaningful. So they frequently are just trying to respond to the quarterly demands of what success looks like and don't have a real sense of that. And it includes just even the personal balance, the ability to have a life that allows you to enjoy the successes you might derive on behalf of the company that you lead. So for me, a big part of it is just being a catalyst of helping people form good visions of the future so that I can then help them decide what to do and what not to do. A lot of businesses deciding not to do this. A lot of businesses removing the barriers that are in people's lives instead of trying to create all smooth pathways. It's just the removal. It's taking the extra initiatives off the plate so we can really hit our key performance indicators.
I think that's an important point you're hitting on, and that's something that a lot of good researchers realize after a while, and I think you've done as well, is you're actually trying to tap into one subconscious because the subconscious makes 95% of our decisions. And a lot of times consultants go in and want to say, hey, here's the answer, but often you actually need to ask a lot of good questions to get to the heart of what's really going on. And a lot of times the client will actually give you the path of solution that's required or that's going to work for them.
That is a brilliant aha, right? Like there, and I'll give you an example. My son is much smarter than me, pure intellectual power. There is no doubt about it. but I see in him the same youth that I had, right? Like, so he still feels that burden of responsibility to have the answers, and he normally does, which is really pretty remarkable. But I think as I move into my journey, I'm much more interested in emotional intelligence than I am actual intellectual power. I think the ability to read the unstated wants, needs, and desires of the person you're with through their body language, through the nuances, by helping get to those whys beneath the surface, right? So that you can help them tap that unconscious ultimate desire. That's the beauty of my psychology background, really. I think in the end, most everything I see is emotional. Everything I see is driven by kind of the limbic system, not necessarily the frontal lobes. We justify a lot of our life with, weighing out what's, cognitively satisfying and better. But in truth, there are some pretty primitive nerves that get hit in the brain that fire our behaviors out of survival, really. I mean, we fire up this emotional system that says fear, excitement, danger, happiness, there's your path to success, excitement. And so those are the things that move us, I think, and certainly the things that make business memorable versus just transactional.
So let's talk more about this emotional intelligence. That's an area you focus on. But I want to know, how did you make that shift? Because I don't know if you had that initially, or what made you focus on that.
I think I did have that aha moment. I think that you get trained in business to look at the spreadsheet, think about EBITDA. You get the spread, all these really seemingly tangible things, which are really important. I don't want to discount any of that, but you can get lost in that without understanding the emotions that drive a lot of the behaviors that get you to those things, right? And I think, like everyone else, I am very kind of buttoned up businessy around, let's get to the numbers. And then when you can't get them, or maybe you'll get them, but you don't sustain them. There's a pretty common thing in customer satisfaction. We're all these initiatives and strategies, and we drive customer sat for a while, and then all of a sudden it's not successful. So let me tell you a story. At Mercedes-Benz, we kept trying to figure out why we got so many negative scores from people who didn't buy cars. So if you looked at the J.D. Power non-purchaser numbers, people who didn't buy cars just hated the experience. And so the question was why? And so we kind of drove down in the science, and we thought, well, we're just not showing a great deal of respect to people who come in. And so we just need to train more on how to do respect. We'd even script it if we had to. None of that had any lasting impact. And so what we've got to, when we really looked at the emotional drivers, is that most of the people who sell cars in Mercedes dealerships have never owned one. They don't drive Mercedes themselves. Their Honda Pilot out in the back 40 lot is what they benchmark against as a good car decision, despite trying to sell a $120,000 S-Class. And now assume you came in and you, Darshan, wanted to buy an S-Class for your 16-year-old as their first vehicle. And I'm driving my Honda Pilot that's about to fall apart. And I'm telling you from a training perspective that you have to demonstrate more respect to Darshan as the salesperson. It was not going to happen. The emotional driver required us to actually have people fall in love with the vehicle, have experiences in the vehicle, understand that there are reasons to buy this vehicle that transcend some just affluence that has no reason, right? Safety, for example, was pretty exciting. So in any regard, we started a program called Drive a Star Home, the Dash program, and every employee at every dealership got a chance to check out cars and use them and drive them. And they almost always picked them for special events or when somebody was bringing a baby home. And it really did put them in a different position as they sold, because they were selling from their own emotion and not resisting the sale through their own emotion. And the sales numbers went. I mean, those non-buyer moments, numbers went up, but so did satisfaction among the buyers.
Yeah, so they started believing actually more of what they were talking about because they actually had the experience.
Amen. Emotionally driven by enveloping themselves inside of the car.
So what's the biggest challenge you find is getting clients to understand this emotional intelligence and how to how do you shift their mind to actually focus on that?
Yeah, it is very difficult because most business leaders are very analytic and very linear and very cognitive. So I have had my challenges, but there are plenty of data points that you can use to take that, logical thinker and show that emotions do pay off. And I'll give you my favorite one. I put it in my new book called Business Personal, which is if you form a personal connection with a customer. Lots of empirical data. And the numbers kind of bounce around a bit, but this is a pretty fair number. Lifetime value increases of 300% if you create a personal emotional connection with a client versus a transactional relationship. So if you see me as a fulfillment object, your loyalty customer spend lifetime is likely to be a third of what you would get if I formed a personal emotional connection. If I was not only a fulfillment object, but you trusted me, you believed I had your interest at heart, that while you might get a coupon from a competitor for a slightly less costly service, the risk emotionally of engaging that practical decision of using the coupon probably would not lure you away. And if it did, it wouldn't take long before you'd come running back because you realize that, yeah, maybe you got the discount, but you didn't get the peace of mind.
I think it's a really good point. It reminded me of, I teach a class on communication and, on presentations and stuff. And going back to talking about numbers, I often talk to the students and they ask them, when you show these bar graphs and pie charts, what's the most important thing? And after a discussion, they realize it's showing the relationship between the bars. It's not just the numbers, but how they're related, and the relationship between them. And that's really where the values, and that's where the numbers come alive. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I call it something slightly different, but I think it's the same concept. That there's the what and there's the so what. Like, here's the what. You can see it on the screen. So what does that mean to you? So what does that mean in relationship to each of those independent variables? But it still comes back. So what does it mean to you? Looking at those numbers, you could look at those numbers all day long. Cool chart, dude. But what does it mean to me? Why are you even putting it up on the screen? Like, give me the connection to how I might benefit from it, either in context or to operationalize it. So I think that's the emotional dimension. I think that's that, you go from the understanding your client to empathizing with them. Understanding it's at the cognitive level. Empathizing is now that I understand it, what does it mean to you?
I think there's even more of a factor now. Like, even if you go back to the car example, many cars are very equal on safety, on various features, and so on. But the emotional connection experience can be really different.
I mean, I think about it. One of my favorite examples is wine, right? Like we have convinced people emotionally that certain wines are really quality. And a lot of that's through the way that the bottle is crafted and, reputational legends that people create. But when you put those wines in glasses next to each other for even very experienced connoisseurs of wine, frequently you can't tell the difference. At a product level, they're both, you might have two really good wines, one at $80 a bottle and one at $60 a bottle, and people can't normally distinguish between the two. But the bottle might create that storytelling, allure, romance that is emotional.
Well, if you think about it, man, like, many products are pretty equal in terms of quality and so on. So nowadays, I think more and more people are buying experiences more than just products and services. What do you think?
Absolutely. And there are places in the market for people who just want to be commodities. If you go back to Blue Ocean Strategy, which I think was just a brilliant book, and in it they went to yellowtail wine as an example to stay in that wine thing, right? In that case, they decided they were going to swim in a blue ocean where wine was pretty haughty, and let's go simple and let's go down market and let's commoditize the crap out of it and make it easy and accessible for people who haven't, who think it's too pretentious to get involved with. That's a beautiful market strategy. But that's an anomaly. Most of us are trying to compete on experience. And what we need to understand is, what is the emotional drivers beneath your core customer segments that allow you to layer that experience on top of otherwise awesome products, technologies, and tools.
I'm actually having a restaurant here in Bangkok in Thailand. And the mission the team has is trying to wow everyone with every dish that we put out. I mean, obviously you can't do it with everyone, but there's two reasons. Because if someone has a wow experience with the dish, they're more likely to do two things. One, come back, and two, share with others. And that's really what you're looking for ultimately, right?
I was with Howard Schultz at least shortly after he had visited Japan, and I think it was the first time they opened a Starbucks in Japan, and he was there to do a media blitz about kind of Starbucks coming to Japan, and he'd gone to a Japanese restaurant the night before one of his major media hits, and the restaurateur not only created this great experience during the dining, but he actually walked Howard out to his car, unknowing who he was dealing with, right? It wasn't because he was Howard Schultz. He just did it because that's who he was. So the next morning on the TV thing, Howard just talked about this guy walking him to his car. He almost forgot to mention that Starbucks was coming to Japan. It was so relevant to how odd and wonderful that experience was to sequel, call to sequel, from arrival to call to sequel. Everything was seamless. And this was just enough to make him want to talk about it off script.
So you wrote a book recently. What was the aha moment that led you to write your most recent book?
So I've been consulting for this client. They were a technology company out of Silicon Valley in California. The founder of it was a guy by the name of Tom Lee, a Harvard-trained physician. He also trained at Stanford Business School, really well educated guy. He decided he was going to revolutionize healthcare, and he's going to start with one clinic, and he's going to see what he could do to make a better primary care experience. So the aha was how he went about doing that. And the fact that he was willing to try to do that, to me, is an aha, because most of us, in all due respect, including myself for most of my career, are much more interested in incremental change. Okay, the system's broken, the ship is sinking. Let me find some ways to patch it up and keep it afloat and see how far we can get down the road, and maybe we can build some new features into the ship that'll make it even more, seaworthy. But in truth, we don't go and say, all right, let's scrap the concept of what ship we have. Let's think about what ship we want to build. And he did that. He just kept saying, why do we do this? Why do we do that? Why is healthcare like this? So in the United States, it's not unusual to go first, still today, to try to have to get an appointment by calling the office to get that appointment. It'll be weeks out for a primary care appointment. So back in the day, they just started using technologies to create an app where you could request an appointment via the app on all the available times to the providers. It was trying to get you to the local closest provider, but if you wanted a secondary provider for a sooner appointment, blah, 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 right? So at the first, they only had one clinic. That wasn't a big deal in terms of routing you. It's just giving you that access. But then when you go to an appointment, normally the doctor is late or the provider is late, and you wait in the waiting room. And then after you wait in the waiting room, you walk back past the scale, get weighed, and then you get into an exam room and you sit there for a while. And so why do you have to sit in two waiting areas? Like, why can't you just wait once? Does everybody need a weigh-in? Maybe at if that's a relevant variable to your disease, maybe, but not everybody, not every time. And certainly that pain point could be removed. And the provider can just go get you. And why can't they be on time? So at this clinic, they were 97% of the time on time within 3 minutes of the appointment. The provider comes from the exam area and comes and gets you, walks you back, starts the clinical conversation in the walk, the rapport building transition, gets you in there, kind of deals with the stuff. And that was the beginning. And Gilmore and Pine in their book, The Experience Economy, basically intimate that we stage experiences. And if we stage them really well, people will pay just to get into the experience. I mean, it's kind of a far-fetched aha kind of concept, I think. And that's what happened. So if I were to go to that clinic in San Francisco in that day, I'd still be paying using my insurance. But I would be paying a membership fee to have access to that app to be able to get all those streamlined experiences. And in the day, they didn't have e-commerce, so I'd have to send in a check for $39 a year to have that access. It was a pretty low bar of entry, right? And if I didn't pay, they probably would have kept me as a member just to kind of build the business. Nowadays, they are part of the membership offering that Amazon provides in the United States called Prime, which I pay like $129 or something like that a year for Prime. Now I can add on $9 a month to that if I want to have this healthcare membership that gives me access to the tools that I've described, and much more involved in the tools now as they've evolved over time. The reason Amazon's involved because Amazon bought them for $4 billion. Aha, create value, disrupt, and wait for Amazon to give you $4 billion.
So tell me more about the experience and how it's different when you go through their clinic or through their facilities.
Yeah, I'll give you a case example, right? If I'm traveling this week to Louisiana. So when I go to Louisiana, let's say I arrive there and all of a sudden I have some symptoms and I'm not really sure what's going on. So I'm just going to open my app as a member and it's going to triage questions for me. So rather than going through Dr. Google and deciding I'm near death, I'm going to have curated, well crafted questions, AI-driven tools move me through. It'll help me decide, hey, click this button right now, and you'll be treated now by a virtual appointment on the app, mobile phone, boom. Don't have to do any other transactions. It's going to immediately put me in with a provider from Louisiana, who's licensed in Louisiana, right? This is a little bit of backstage complexity, but they'll make it happen. And when, let's say I need a prescription, well, then they'll get with Amazon Pharmacy, and they'll be able to have it delivered to my hotel in the next 4 hours or the next morning, depending upon the availability of the product. Think about that from a ease of use case. If I needed to go into a clinic because the condition warranted me being seen in outpatient clinic, it would have directed me to my closest One Medical clinic where I could get that done and the next available appointment. If I needed to go to the emergency room, it would have told me to do that, right? Instead of wasting my time with any of those options that One Medical could facilitate, it's going to send me to a higher level of care based on need. That's the kind of stuff it does. If I do follow-up and I say, hey, I have a question about billing, the AI in the app is going to send that to the administrative queue. If I say I've got sniffles, then it's going to send me to the clinical queue. No human involved in triaging, no delays associated with that, taking the workload off of people who would otherwise be just fielding insurance questions all day long, who really are not in the insurance side of the business, right? So there's a lot of that. There's AI being used in the exam rooms on permission so that the physician can just look at you, the provider can look at you and be present with you and can look at the notes captured by AI in the back end instead of having to try to do their own capture during. There's plenty of those types of integrations. They're doing population health. So at age 50, I would get a task in my app that says it's time for your colonoscopy. By the way, look for in the mail a screening kit. So just a kit, they often are branded like things like Cologuard here in the United States, where instead of having to do a full colonoscopy, you can just send in a stool sample. Lovely topic here, I'm sure. But you can send in a sample that enables you to get a screening for people who avoid it almost all the time. So at population health, we're starting to drive health and wellness related behaviors, which drives down health costs. Bottom line, this is the ecosystem thing that you and I started talking about in the beginning. Whether it's at the family ecosystem, you got to treat the providers, you got to treat your insurance partners, you got to treat the patients, and all of that ecosystem has to be aligned to create a better experience for the humans who come in to this technology-aided environment.
So I was going to ask you, how did they train or how did they change the caregivers in terms of the way they're approaching the patients?
Well, fortunately, most, they had very few of them to start with as they were bringing these technologies on. So as they were bringing these folks on, they were showing them the kinds of technologies that were interfacing with the patients. And most of the people that they attracted were people who could see the benefits of this. But yes, there are people who have to change their behavior as these technologies come forward. I'm used to writing notes. Now it's being captured in the background by AI. Instead of having to draft the note from scratch, I now have to revise the note. It shifts the workflows without a doubt. But part of the messaging from onboarding on and selection through onboarding is that we are constantly adapting. We're going to use tools to decrease the human load so we can maximize your experience. Most providers want that. We have a shortage here in the United States of primary care providers, and people are burning out because all those administrative tasks and all that bureaucratic red tape. They want to be freed up to do what they came to do, the calling of medicine, to improve lives, to advance healing. And so the vision is one that says that's what we're about, and our tools should do that. If our tools don't, our technologists are here to help you. So if you're seeing that you're working in 3 different workflows and you have 15 clicks, our UX design team is going to come in and figure out how can we reduce the complexity of your work task. You're a consumer just as much as the end user is a consumer, because the ecosystem is codependent upon your ability to deliver.
So if someone wants to start looking at emotional intelligence and the emotional experience into their own brand or product or service, what are 3 things they should do initially to go down that path?
Here's where I think it's an exciting interface. I think go ahead, do your research, use AI, find out everything you can about emotional intelligence. And here's where you're going to come to the beautiful end of the road. After it tells you everything about what to do, how you could do it, the next steps, it puts this beautiful output in your space. It's for you to practice it. And AI will not demonstrate it. It'll try. It understands the tenets. You'll see it in the way it interacts with you. But push comes to shove, I have never felt appreciated by AI. It can fool me for a second, like, oh, thank you. Or I've never really felt validated. It may tell you, oh, that was a really good choice, Joseph. You made a really good choice. You're an LLM. You are not a person. I know that that's your programming. I know that you don't exist. You don't really matter. Now, I can get deceived for a while, but ultimately that's kind of ingenuine in the end, because all I really need is a tool to get me the information in a very sophisticated rhythm. What I also need is a real human who doesn't fake it, who says, Darshan, thank you again for allowing me to be on the show. I mean, I get that you trust me with your audience to give some content today. And guess what? That really comes from my heart, and no AI script could deliver it.
Are there other brands that people may interact with on a daily basis that you can maybe show as an example that have really struck this balance between digital ease and emotional resonance?
I think Amazon at macro, it's digital first, definitely. But if you were in the United States and you needed to return an item, they would do all the things to try to handle it digitally without bringing a person involved. But the moment you need a person, that person's pretty amazing normally. And there isn't a lot of hassle. And they know your customer lifetime value because they've got the analytics on it, and they can make decisions in real time to not make you go through some kind of crazy machinations to get a product back or justify the return, right? The humans are well trained on what it takes. And I think pretty well selected as a rule on their capacity to engage, along with some scripted cues, to engage authentically. And Zappos, which is a brand that Amazon acquired, is one that I worked with for a long time that I think is really at the best when it comes to calling their customer contact team, which they actually call the customer loyalty team, because they see their roles as building loyalty, not just a contact center that's there to handle complaints.
So what are three challenges or mistakes people often make when they're trying to go down this path of trying to enhance the emotional experience?
Either they underestimate the importance of technology to remove the pain points, or they overestimate the importance of technology to deliver the experience. So those are the two biggest ones. And I think third, they don't know what emotional experience they want to drive. So on the first point, look, if you think you're going to exist without technology today and you're going to be just high touch and everything's going to be just human to human, you better have some incredible margins to make that work. And God knows where you're going to find all the talented people, because it really is a challenge to find that in the market, right? So you need to have those tools. And plus, consumers really mostly want convenience a lot of the time. So you need to have those tools available. But if that's all you have, then at some point in another, you're just going to be a commodity because everybody else can get those same tools. That's kind of a parity play now. If you want a differentiator, it's going to be on the people that you have and people who understand what you want everybody to experience through your brand. And that's that third point. Some people never spend the time to say, hey, you just joined me at this dry cleaner and you were working at the dry cleaner across the street. Guess what? Every time somebody walks into our building, this is how we want them to leave. Your job is to figure out what you need to do to try to make that happen, leveraging our tools, our processes, sometimes modifying our processes within reason if you have to make that happen. But that's what we're doing. And so not defining it really makes it hard for people to operationalize against it.
When you talk about technology, are you talking about really the UI UX part of it, or what specifically when you say technology?
I'm talking about the UI, the UX, but I'm also talking about what is selected to be available to you. Let me give you a simple example. If I'm the dry cleaner, do I need a chatbot? I don't know. Is frequently asked questions good enough? If they can't get the frequently asked questions, should I have somebody available as a human on that? I mean, what do I need? If I have a chatbot that never gets me to a human, then that's a big mistake in deployment of technology. Plus, you better make sure your chatbot's pretty dang sophisticated, because if you're competing against bigger players that got such a better learning model for their chatbots, that you're probably going to be pretty static relative to that. So now my point is, it's really right-sizing your technology for the use case, making sure that you're driving convenience and accessibility, but you have the back support so people can opt human as they need.
So looking ahead, maybe 5, 6, 7 years, what role do you see AI playing, and how is that going to change, making business is being so personal?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be harder to make personal decisions, and we're going to be making more and more similar decisions, that we're going to winnow away at the best option that everybody is using. I think it's going to be such an opportunity for those people who use this to get them to a point where they inspire themselves to be innovative. Because in all due respect, the realities from my experience with AI and what I predicted, unless it jumps in another generation, is that it's not innovating. It's best practicing. It's putting output out around parameters based on roles, based on instructions. It's the person who understands what you get from all of that and then figures out, okay, now let's do something that's completely contrary that still fits the needs of our business. That's where you're going to break through. And that's why All Business is Personal is written about One Medical, because they did that very thing. I mean, I don't think AI would have told them to do the things that they did. They chose to do them because they were unwilling to accept a world of iterative change.
So I think what you're saying is that AI is certainly going to play a role, but the human element is always going to be there and required to make the innovation. But what do you think would be needed in AI to maybe help with that innovation? What's missing?
I think that what's missing is that humans learning how to do the innovation and what is the behavior that's needed off of the AI to take your business away from the path most traveled, right? So just as you encourage your communication students to look at that next layer, that the data is not the story is the interrelationship of the data to itself and how that impacts them. That is the same kind of teaching, I think we're going to have to say. The data that you generate from the AI is just a graph. And now your challenge is to take the graph that you have in front of you and show a relationship that enables you to move the business forward.
What things do you think brands can do today to help future-proof what's happening in the marketplace with trends and everything to make sure they still stay relevant and on top of and still making it personal?
So I guess the truth is, if I could future proof any brand, I probably wouldn't be on this podcast right now. I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere. I kind of enjoy the idea that we can't solve that problem completely, but I also am not dodging your question. So I think the fundamental thing that we need as brands is to remember that while much changes in the way we go to market and the tools we use to achieve outcomes, all business is personal. When it gets right down to you, Darshan, when I come on the show today, it's personal to you that I do something that helps your audience, or else you wasted your time and your relational capital with them, right? Like that's personal to you. For me, it's personal that you took the time to interview me, that you cared enough to be willing to say yes to the opportunity of this happening. And I care that I deliver some kind of content that's meaningful to the people who are out there personally hoping they're going to get a nugget from this thing, that maybe they can think differently, or maybe they can start conceptualizing how they're going to approach business going forward. So we have to realize that people are fairly universal, though nuanced by culture and all kinds of other factors, in what we desire at a primary level, very Maslowian in the sense of our primary need states. And so that's never going to change. And so if I'm going to future proof my business, I'd always be looking at this other stuff as tools to those human outcomes.
What word of advice would you give to brand leaders that are feeling overwhelmed by all this pace of digital change, AI, and all these things that are kind of bombarding them all at the same time?
Well, good for you, because you're paying attention. That would be my first thing. You know, the doubling rate of knowledge now is out of control. So it's not a matter of being able to keep up with all this stuff. It's a matter of curating the stuff that you can leverage based on your skill sets and what your consumers, the ones who pay your bills, are most interested in. So that's hard enough, but it's doable. It's, the more I know about my customers, my core customer segments, their wants, needs, desires, stated and unstated, the more I can understand that, the more I understand my strengths, my unique strengths, and how we can bring the benefits and attributes of our services or products to the market within the context of our strengths. And I can overlay the emotional enveloping tone that pulls it all together in a nice box. That's all I need to worry about. I don't need to worry about what my competitors are doing, because if I spend too much time doing that, then I forget about why I'm competing, like what it is that I am bringing to the table. I don't have to worry about every micro change and be on top of every platform and technology. Oh my gosh. I frequently get asked by people, do you know this AI platform? Or are you using this AI tool? I'm like, geez, I get a daily update there's an AI for that on all these new AI trends. But even so, I mean, no, I don't know that one. And I'm not sure if it'll be here tomorrow is part of my curiosity. I don't know who's going to buy them. I don't know if it's going to prove out viability. I don't know if it adds value beyond this other one that seems to do pretty much the same thing that one's doing. So yeah, I think we don't need to be, on the cutting edge of societal evolution around all these things, right? We just need to know ourselves and our customers. Know thyself, know thy customer, know thy business goals and objective, and know what you want people to feel. I think that's as much as we can do.
Yeah, I think that's sage advice. I think nothing's going to change the fact that if you have a deeper understanding of your customer, your client, your patient, that's going to help you a lot. And all these technologies are going to change and evolve. And do you need to be an expert in all of them? No. But, sure, you can keep up to maintain yourself relevance and knowledge of what's going on and also be conversational in it. Because if you ever really need to implement them completely, you can always find someone to help you that has the expertise to help you do that, right? But where you can't have the expertise that only you can bring to your business and services, understanding your customer better than anybody else. And then that's where the opportunities are going to pop up for innovation and differentiation.
And Darshan, I hate to go retro on you here, but Peter Drucker said we're not in business to create a profit. And then he alluded to the fact that we're in a business to create a customer. And I think that's it. Like it's through customers profits go. If you just obsess about profits, you can kill all your customers over time. You can make them for a short period of time, but you can strip away all your value and then you can not have customers. So I think to your point, the more we know about our customers, the more we're positioned to create profits, which enable us to sustain, which is why we exist in business, to have impact and hopefully a balance of impact positive to the world around us, but also positive impact in our own lifestyles. I am not an apologist for making profit, but I am an apologist for those businesses who do make bad profit, who make profit at the expense of their customers.
So what area of interest intrigues you to look into the next several months or next year or two?
I have a book that will be out in 2027, planning ahead a bit here. And it's looking at a female leader in a sector where female leaders are just non-existed. And I think I really am wanting to talk about people who break through ceilings of whatever that is in leadership. How do they do that with a focus on others? So I call it I call the concept otherness. Leaders who demonstrate otherness and break through the barriers that have been imposed upon them without really a lot of self-righteous indignation, just a real focus on keeping your feet moving to create value. And lo and behold, the ceiling, cracks.
So just to give a little preview, have you found any 3 core traits or characteristics that drive people to break through the ceiling?
One of them for sure. I don't have 3 yet. It's 2027. Darshan, give me a break, will you? I mean, like if I had it already, I'd already have the book written. But one for sure is being comfortable, being uncomfortable. These people are restless. They are constantly pushing themselves to go out. As soon as they get comfortable, they almost immediately say, "Uh-oh, this is a danger zone for me. I got to keep driving." And that's how they get through what other people accept as barriers.
And I think that's related to what we talked about earlier. Don't worry about competitors much. You become your worst competitor. And that's something you control, and that's something you can keep improving on and innovating on.
I think that's so aligned. I would have not made that association. Say, this is why we're human. Like we have that opportunity to have this conversation, and then I garner an insight from you that now may accidentally show up in the 2027 book, hoping you'll forget that you're the source. No, if I do use it, I'll try to remember to cite you. I'm getting so old. I don't know where I get my information.
Sounds like you'll be on the show again a third time then.
And that could be. Yeah. If I quote you, all right, I've got a deal. I'll write that down.
So if you could have lunch with anybody in your industry, digital marketing or books or whatever, who would it be and why?
Well, I always hate this question because I have had most everybody that I want to interact with. I really have. It's not an ego message. It's just that I've had the courage to say, "Hey, you don't know me." but I would really like to talk to you. And it's amazing how many people respond to that. It really is. And then after you get some momentum on that and you build a certain, reputational, ticket of entrance, then you start getting the next level. So I would really make that more of a aha moment if I could than an actual, oh, if I could only talk to kind of moment. The aha moment for me is just identify who you'd like to have lunch with or have a chat with and reach out to them. And if they say no, find somebody else of similar ilk and until you find somebody who says yes. And then when you're done with the conversation, you might ask, who else do you think I might benefit from a conversation with based on what we talked about today? And try to build a network that enables you to keep getting more and more of those people that you hope to speak to in that column of people you've spoken to.
Yeah, I think it's true. A lot of people are looking forward to having an engaging, intelligent conversation. So if you can offer that, you're probably going to get a good audience.
Yeah. And the people that are way out there that I might have listed in my list, I need to build a network to get to there if I really want it. And so throwing out an aspirational thing is just kind of identifies the gap, if you will.
Well, on that note, thank you for an engaging conversation. I learned a lot, and thank you for being on the show a second time. I look forward to not only reading this book, but the next one. And look forward to
Darshan, you're
hearing.
such a great communicator. I don't know that you learned anything that you didn't already know, but I appreciated the opportunity for us to talk about it together and learn with each other. So thank you.
Oh, you always learn. There's always something new to learn all the time. So
that's true.
Well, thanks again, Joseph.
Thank you, Darshan.
Getting to AHA was brought to you by iResearch. To find out more about us, head to iResearch.com and make sure to search for Getting to AHA in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. And don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening.